Hello everyone, welcome to day 3 of the Big Questions Debate Basics series. My name is Ethan Bonet, and today we're looking at crafting the crux of the debate, your own individual case. Now, cases are a little bit complex, so we're splitting up this individual lecture into 2 different lecture videos. Today we'll be covering the framework, tomorrow we'll be talking about contentions. But let's take a step back first and look at the case structure overall. In a big questions debate case, you have 3 key components. You have the resolution statement, which is a simple I affirm or I negate the resolution, and then you state the resolution text. It's a simple I affirm or I negate the resolution, and then you state the resolution text. Next, you have framework. Now, your framework is how you're setting up the judge's evaluation of the round. So you have a couple of key components. The first is definitions. Your job as a debater is to clarify the individual words of the resolution text as they come up. Now, this has 2 purposes. First, it clarifies what it is that you're actually talking about, but second, and more sneakily, it sets up individual expectations for what each debater is supposed to defend. The second part of the framework are burdens or observations. You say, I have 3 observations, and then you just list out the observations. And your job in these observations is to essentially lay out what you have to do to win the round and what your opponent has to do to win the round. After framework, you have contentions, which are the meat of your case. They're your individual groupings of arguments, and they all satisfy your framework to show why you're winning the round. But if that sounds like a lot, you can ignore the contentions component for now because we're talking about it in the next lecture. For now, we're focusing on the framework. Let's dive into the key components a little bit more specifically. During framing, you have 3 different obligations. Your first job is to set up advantageous definitions to maximize your ground in the round. Let's say that the resolution contains the word primarily or something. Your job as the debater is to find a definition for primarily that best sets up your ground. That is to say, I don't have to prove that this happens in every case, for instance. I just have to prove that it is the primary driver of most cases. I don't have to prove that this is the only driver, just that it's the most important. That instinctively tells the judge that, hey, that instinctively tells the judge that you can win the round even if they buy a little bit of what your opponent thinks. So never skip definitions. The second job in your framing that falls under the burdens and observations is a method for evaluating the round. Essentially, you have to tell the judge, based off of what the resolution says, there's a certain way that they have to think about the round. That is to decide who wins. Is it a cost-benefit analysis where they just simply go off of whichever side does the most good for the most amount of people? Is it a likelihood of truth weighing mechanism where they have to decide which side they are more likely to believe more? Your own method of evaluating the round has to be established in your framing so as to best skew the round in your advantage. And third, similar to the method of evaluating the round, you have to specify what AF must do and what neg must do in order to win the round. This is called burdens, it's found in your observations, and it's most advantageous because you reference it as your speech goes on, because chances are you're not going to win every argument, and so you want to double down on the most crucial ones. So, let's do a little bit of practice if this all sounds very abstract. Take last year's resolution. Resolved, on balance, societies benefit from religious beliefs and practice. Let's say you're the AF debater in this case. Now, as AF, the definitions themselves aren't terribly important. You can just pull from dictionary definitions to tell the judge what you're talking about. But let's look at the other 2 pieces. First, I want you to set up a method of evaluating the round, and second, I want you to tell the judge what the AF and the neg must do to win the round. So you can pause this video for a bit, write out your own rhetoric, and then we'll go back and clarify and see what the example looks like. All right, so when I debated this topic, my case had 2 individual observations. First, I argued that this debate was a cost-benefit analysis of the impacts of religion on society because on balance essentially means, on balance, which side is better. And the better side is dependent on which side has more good impacts for the most amount of people. This allows both debaters to leverage empirics, and since the AF has a lot of strong studies backing individual health benefits, backing peace, and backing humanitarian aid, this is a pretty strong way for the AF to win the round based off of this evaluation. But I went further also and said that this has 2 implications. So now we get into what AF and neg must do in order to win the round. You'll notice first I talked about arguments existing on the majority society. That's similar to the cost-benefit analysis piece. But second, we clarify that the AF's job is not to prove that religion is the best form of societal benefit in the entire world, just that it has empirical benefits. So, for example, the existence of secular therapy doesn't detract from religion's own ability to have mental health benefits on its practitioners. You notice this clarifies that the AF doesn't need to prove it's the best thing in the world, it just has to prove that it does more good than harm to win the round, thus establishing what the AF must do, and then neg therefore must do the converse. So, if you want, as a little exercise, you can go about applying this to the neg as well and seeing how a neg might look to framing. And then after that's done, you can look at applying it to your own case for this resolution. That's it for framing. Next up, we're going to talk about contentions, the crux of your case. See you all then.